Hello. I said a couple days ago that I was going to do a review on my experience at Elam Bible Institute in college. So this is going to be a very, very mixed review, and everything I'm saying, 100% I'm saying with Jesus, the exact experience I had, right? So I'm smoking a cigarette for this because this is something very, very, very emotional for me. My experience with the religious community, I'm going to go through first my experience at Bible school, and then at later videos I'm going to go through experiences that I've had through churches in my life. Because if there's anyone in the world that's been burned by the religious community, it's me. So this message is for every single person that's ever really, 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 truly been devastated by the Christian community, and why to not let that interfere with your relationship with God, why I want you to know that that's not God. Don't get a bad taste in your mouth because of bad experiences with Christians. I have spoken to so many people that stopped going to churches because of things that happen at church. So many people in the world have been burned by the religious community, and this is why it's so important for me to do this message, because not only have I been super burned by the religious community in churches time and time and time again, both my children and myself, but I was living on campus for 2.5 years at a Bible Institute in college here in Lima. And I want to encourage everyone. One, church is filled with the broken. Nobody there should you change your expectation on. When you go into church, you don't change your expectation because they're Christians. You don't change your expectation because they're in church. You don't change your expectation. And so many of us are disappointed because we put an expectation on people that love Jesus, right? And the truth is, we're all still human. Everyone is still in the natural. We still all have that spirit man, and no one's perfect. No pastor, no leader, no one. No Bible school teachers, no Bible school leaders, no Bible school admin, no neighbors in Bible school. Nobody's perfect. And I let my experience of all my failed expectations that I had gone through after already being really burned by a church, really, that was my last straw, right? And when I left Bible school, I didn't want Jesus in my life. And in fact, I lived the next 10 years of my life without Jesus at all. And those 10 years were miserable. Absolutely miserable. So I'm going to start from the very, very beginning. So I was living in Scottsville, and I had one of the most beautiful apartments I've ever had in my entire life. It was stunningly beautiful. I painted the entire apartment. We were allowed to paint there every single spec. It was a 2-floor townhouse. Every room was pastel. The kids had rooms. We loved it there. I had really good friends down the block. It was a place we absolutely loved, and it was so affordable because it was income-based, and I would have lived there for very, 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 very long until I got completely on my feet and was ready to buy a house. But what had happened was Dante's dad hadn't seen him since he was 2 days old, and now Dante was 2. So he had begged and begged and begged to come for a visit, and the whole rigmarole. And I let him come for a visit, and he stayed with us for 3 weeks. And during that 3 weeks, he was physically abusive with me multiple times. And then I left for work one day, and I came home, and the whole bottom half of my son had bruises all over him. And at that moment, I knew I was about to get my ass kicked when I told him, get the fuck out and don't come near us ever again. And I did. I got my head stomped in with steel-toe boots over and over and over to the point my whole ear was black, and I couldn't lay on my head and stuff. I probably had concussions and I got stomped out in my stomach and kicked, and all of this while he's holding my son, and my son's screaming, reaching for me. He's just stomping me out like a street fight, right? So I'm just holding on to his legs because he was trying to leave with my son and take off. And he said, I'm taking him. You're never going to see him again. So as I'm being stomped on, that's why I had so many stomps. I was holding on for dear life, and he couldn't get me off him. And I took tons and tons and tons of stomps to the head and the body and everywhere else before I couldn't hold on anymore. So he left with my son, and I got up and I ran a few doors down to one of my close friends' houses, and I screamed. He just took my son, and this particular friend was over 3 days earlier when he beat my ass right in front of her. Not a few days earlier, it was like a week earlier. And she actually had to tackle him off me. He was holding me by the head and slamming my head over and over to the ground, like a basketball, because I asked him to turn off the song he was playing, because it was just the P word nonstop, and the kids were all around, so he didn't like that and attacked me in front of my friend. But so I ended up getting a restraining order, and he hasn't seen my son since. So part of my outrage with this man that hit my son on the soccer field, who's getting away with it, is because that's very traumatizing for me, because that was the only time in my life my son was ever hit. And to now have him hit by just some kid's dad, you know what I mean, really poured salt on some deep rooted wounds. And so anyway, so from that point, CPS came, everything, and I was court mandated to spend 9 months twice a week in domestic abuse counseling at a beautiful counselor. And so this was 1 month before I joined Bible school. So all of a sudden I went to bed and I cried out to the Lord, and I was like, God, I can't, I don't know what to do. Oh, and that got us evicted because the cops had to come, and the cops were there earlier for the other fight. And since it was income-based housing, once the cops are there twice, you automatically get evicted. So we also got evicted, had 30 days to move. And so we were losing our housing. The lines for income-based housing are extremely long. I was making minimum wage, supporting 2 kids alone. So, you know, it was again a time God swooped into my life. So this time I went to bed after praying, and I hadn't been close to the Lord in ever, right? And I had a dream that night, and there was a voice over and over and over that said, go to Bible school, go to Bible school, go to Bible school. And my whole dream, it kept repeating this over and over and over. And I woke up, and I've had dreams and visions and prophetic dreams and stuff my whole entire life. So I knew this was one of those. So I was like, Bible school? One, I've never read a Bible, opened a Bible, nothing. Like, never went to church. Like, I went to church very, very briefly when I was pregnant with Amber to get her baptized. And I made my communion pregnant because I wanted Amber to believe in Jesus, even though I didn't. I wanted her to. That's the last time I went to church. So I had this dream, so I Googled, like, is Bible school a thing? And I never heard of a Bible school. I didn't even know there'd be something called a Bible school, you know what I mean? I wasn't in that world. I wasn't in religion. I didn't, you know what I mean? Nothing. So I Googled, is Bible school real? And it turns out there are. So then I was like, all right, well, I'm supposed to go to Bible school. So I Google, like, where is Bible schools by Geneseo, New York? And that's where I was living at the time. And lo and behold, there was a school that was one town over, and it was called Elam Bible Institute and College, and it literally had the word Bible in it. So I instantly knew that's where the Lord wanted me. So I'm getting evicted. My income was very low. We went from a rent that was $250 a month I got approved for a 3-bedroom on campus that was $850. I called the school to ask about FAFSA, and they told me we don't have FAFSA. And I said, how much is every class? And they said the 2 credits are $800, the 3 credits are $1,200, but most of our classes are 3 credits. And I was like, I'd have to pay that out of pocket? They're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, is it like a payment plan? They're like, no, you pay for the class, you take it. So I got off the phone and I said, God, I know that was you. I know you gave me that dream. I'm so poor. I could never afford $850 in rent. I had no car. And I was like, all right, God, I don't know what any of that means. And then I couldn't shake the feeling that I was supposed to go to Bible school. So I called my spiritual mom and I said, I'm going to tell you something crazy. And she knew I'm the least religious person in the world. And I said, I had this dream and I'm supposed to go to Elam Bible school, and I don't know how or this or that, but I'm going to do it. So she's like, yeah, I think you should. And I was like, well, I don't know how. And she's like, just do it. So she offered to pay for my first semester to get me in there. And so she paid my first semester, but I'm still like, all right, I have $850 in rent. When I moved, I wasn't going to be able to keep my job. So I ended up being homeless when all that happened, when we got kicked out of the place. So now I'm homeless, and I moved to Swain, New York to live with my mom. And I'm just like, God, I have no job, I have no car, I have these 2 kids. Mom lived in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere to even walk to get work. And I'm like, you're telling me to go to Bible school. I don't see how it's going to happen. So they called me, and there wasn't a security deposit. It's just your first month's rent and stuff. And they said, you can move in on campus. I said, when? They said, right now. I said, okay. So I still had no way to pay for classes, no way to pay rent, but I knew God was calling me there. So I said, okay, and I moved into the apartment. And my first day there, I went into the bathroom, and I did all my crying in the bathroom and in the shower, or, quietly. My kids never saw me cry my entire life. Even Amber, they've asked me, do you cry? They've seen me cry at movies, and they're like, other than a movie, I've never seen you cry at anything in real life. And they never once did, no matter what was going on, not once did they see me cry. And I move in, and I'm sitting on the toilet, and the toilet seat's closed, and I cry out to God, and I said, God, you put us here. I have no money, I have no job, I have no car, I don't know how to pay. Like, what is going on? What are you doing? So I walk into town, and I just start applying everywhere. So I walk in, the first place I walk in, I get hired. It's a food store, but it's minimum wage of 40 hours. You can't support 3 people on minimum wage at 40 hours, and you can't pay $1,200 per class on that. And on top of that, I have to pay out of pocket for childcare. So I'm like, how do I pay a babysitter and childcare and tuition on this, Lord? So I know I couldn't. So after I got that job, I walked across the street, across the parking lot, and there's this like hole in the wall biker bar, just real place that I would never ever ever in my life ever go, ever. I would never ever go there, never eat there, nothing. It was a bar, but it had like tables, but it would be anyone that went there, they went there for the bar and they'd get some bar food, but all the bills were primarily alcohol with some food, and the people would be getting all the bar drinks but sitting at the tables. So I took that job. So I was working full-time at the grocery store, and then I was working 6 nights a week waitressing, and I was there till 2 a.m. every day. and I was making a ton of money. Like, I was making so much money that I was able to pay for all of my tuition, all of our rent. I had no car, and every single day after work, I'd walk home and carry up this huge hill, this huge box of groceries. Which, another thing, one of my failed expectations were, I lived on campus for 2.5 years, and every person there knew I didn't have a car, but not one single time ever did I ever get offered a ride to or from the grocery store. So year round, snow, rain, it didn't matter. I had to walk to work and walk back with boxes of groceries, and I'd blow out my knees a lot because I had been in a really bad car accident, more than one really bad car accident, and 2 really bad snowboarding accidents. So my knees can't handle weight. So every time I'd be walking up the hill, my knees would be swollen. I have to elevate my feet. And when I was home, I could barely walk. I couldn't stand. I wouldn't be up on my feet at all. And every single morning, I'd make a meal in the crock pot. So every single night, my kids would have a home-cooked meal. And also, every single moment I was gone working, I was paying babysitters per hour. So I was super, super poor. There was a day before class I was crying because I was like, God, I'm the smelly girl in class. I literally had to go to school without deodorant because buying diapers and food and all my expenses, I couldn't buy myself anything. Literally, I couldn't spend 1 penny on myself. I had not my bare necessities, but my kids had everything they needed, which is what was important. And I couldn't even buy a $1 body spray to cover up my stench, so I just had to sit there and smell and go to work and smell and everything, you know. So that was one of my failed expectations. And again, if it was a regular school, I wouldn't have had that expectation or been let down, because I'd be like, people in the world are selfish and no one cares. But I thought because I lived on campus and there's all these students, everyone has cars, all these professors live on campus, there are tons and tons. The campus is huge, and there's all these houses with tons of adult families, and then even people associated with the church, pastors from the church, tons and tons of adult families, right? And I just, to the person that is annoying me, I'm not going to respond. I'm going to continue on with my story. So anywho, listen to the words of Jesus. Stop thinking with your little mini, what's it called? A millimeter monster, and listen to my words, because you need to hear them more than most people. So anyway, where was I? See what happens when people distract me with nonsense? Please, fellas, keep your comments to yourself. People want to hear about Jesus. So where was I? I would work all the time. The little energy I had was to do laundry and clean my house and do meal prep. And I was sick almost the whole time I was there. I had bronchitis the whole time. I never missed a day of work because there is no PTO. You know what I mean? You miss a day of pay, and I couldn't pay my rent or my electric bill or my tuition, and we go homeless. So there's a point that my bronchitis got so bad that by the time I got to my doctor, she literally yelled at me and said, Ashley, you should be in the hospital right now. I don't know how you're breathing. I don't know how you're speaking. I don't know how you're even here. Like, I had almost no anything, but I was like every few feet stopping, trying to breathe. I was so sick, and I had to be on multiple rounds of steroids. And I spent a lot of my time in Bible school with strep throat, bronchitis, and on steroids a lot. So then to do all my studying, I would take pictures of the pages of my notebook, and what I would do is I would take all the pictures of my notebook and I would read them in between tables, and I would read them at the food store when there was no one in my line. And I did all my studying between tables and all that, and then I'd write all my papers at 2 a.m. and I passed every single class ever. I was a straight A student. Thank you, Jesus, for the intelligence and the hard work ethic. And I had a teacher there, and she just has the heart of Jesus. And she said, Ashley, do the things that nobody else wants to do, and you'll have the results that no one else will have. And I kept that my entire life. And I had those words, and even in corporate America, I'd go early, I'd set up all the rooms, move all the tables, the chairs. I went above and beyond all the time. And the problem with perverts is that, I don't know, listen, sir, your insecurity about your very small member is not my problem. So if you could please tone down the fake testosterone and leave me the hell alone. Thank you. So I'm going to get back to this story. Thank you for erasing all of those. Very nice of you. So I'm going to carry on now. So, anywho, I would also take pictures of my notes and study those, and I studied my ass off. I wrote my papers in the evenings, and it was really hard being a straight A student, and my son was 2, my daughter was 8. My son, had some issues, and so did my daughter, that made them a little bit more difficult. And I ended up being there for 2.5 years. So one of my other failed expectations was there's a day that there was a final exam in one of my courses, and I got the highest grade in my whole class, and I only got 1 wrong on the entire final. And I finished first. I handed in my paper. I had to get out of there, go to work, you know what I mean? So just poop, 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 poop. I studied my ass off every single night for that in between tables. And when we got the results back, my professor called me up privately, and he said, Ashley, you got the highest grade in the class. And I smiled, and I was very, very proud, because there's over 100 kids. These kids grew up on the Bible. They knew the Bible. I had never read a Bible. I didn't know anything. You know what I mean? You guys see, I can't, I don't know a lot about the Bible. I read stuff, and I tell you guys, Google pinhole and rich people. I don't know. So he said, you got 1 wrong. And I'm thinking he's going to say congratulations, and I'm all lit up and bubbly. And then his next words were, did you cheat on this final? And I stared at him, and I said, we all took it sitting in the room. It wasn't by computer. It's a handwritten test. I said, how do you cheat on anything in the Bible? There's so many words in every single chapter, and this was on a whole section of the entire Bible, a whole section this final was on. And so I just walked away, and I walked outside, and I cried hysterically, and I went to my friend Alexis and Ian's house, and I was bawling hysterically, and I told them what just happened. I called my spiritual mom, and I was like, I don't know if he's going after my character because I have 2 kids by 2 men and I'm not married, and he thinks, well, if she's willing to be a Jezebel, she is also willing to cheat, or if he was insulting my intelligence. I don't know, but I feel there was probably no other person in the history of his career that he asked if they cheated on an exam. And I know with everything in my soul that if any single kid in that whole class got my score, he would not have asked them if they were cheating. So that was another failed expectation, and it broke my heart. And we did end up speaking later in life, and he did genuinely apologize to me, and I forgave him, and we had a good closure about it. And I really, really appreciated that when I reached out, he apologized and didn't make an excuse, and he manned up and owned up to his mistake, and told me how genuinely sorry he was, So I truly appreciated his response in that. So I'm going to tell you about some other stories there. We had neighbors, and my children were not allowed to speak to them at all. They would not speak to me. They would not look at me. They didn't like that I had the 2 kids by 2 men and I was a single woman. There was a blow-up pool they'd set up all summer. My children were not allowed to go into it. They would call the office on me daily and say things trying to get me kicked out from the time I was there because they didn't want me there. And these were very, very, very prominent, well-respected people that, had orphanages and had lived on campus. They probably still are. They lived on campus up until just a couple years ago, but they lived on campus like, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And they treated us so horrible that my kids would be like, why can't we play with them? My 2-year-old didn't understand why I have to be like, you can't go by the pool. And, I would get really dirty looks. And the day after Halloween, they called the office and said that I had rotted pumpkins all over. And I said, I live on campus, walk across the street, not one pumpkin is rotted at all. There's not even a brown spot. They are fresh as could be. Actually, it wasn't after Halloween. It was before Halloween even happened. They didn't like that I put Halloween pumpkins, so they tried to report me at the office and say they were rotted, like I was damaging the deck or whatever. So I was like, come over, look for yourself. They're not rotted. So that got dismissed. Then another night, I'm in bed, literally in bed, sound asleep, and I hear screaming outside, a woman screaming, and I know she needed help. And I heard a man's voice, so I knew she was fighting with a man. And as somebody who's been a victim of domestic abuse, if I hear a female in trouble, I'm jumping in no matter what. So I run outside in my pajamas, barefoot. I intervene. I tell the girl, come upstairs with me. You could stay here till he leaves. If you need the cops, if you need to talk, whatever it is, come inside. Like, you're safe. It's just me and my kids. And I intervened and calmed everything down. And eventually they calmed things down. And she's like, I'm going to leave with him. And I knew it was just a female in a very abusive relationship. And I said, okay, but you have a safe place here, even if you want to wait till he calms down and still go back another day. But she left with him. So I went up, I went to bed, and the next day I got called into the office and they tried kicking me out. And they said, your neighbors called and you were outside of the house screaming, cursing, fighting with a man, and we can't have that on campus. And I smiled and I laughed and I said, that's funny that other people heard this woman screaming. She was clearly distraught, and I was the only one that went out to help her. I said, it's also funny that people would think it was me out there screaming, being screamed at by this man, obviously in distress, and nobody would have come to help me. But the truth is, I was sound asleep. I've never met this woman in my life, and I went out to save her, like any good Christian would. So, no, sorry, can't kick me out for that. So that went away. So then I got called into the office again, another point in time, and I was told it was by Carrie, and her and her husband Noah, they were both fired because their corruption finally came out. It didn't come out with me, even though I was very abused by them, by Carrie, not Noah. And but it came out eventually, and they were fired. So Carrie called me into the office and said, I want you to know, if you fail one semester, you're being kicked out of school and evicted. And I said, Carrie, your policy is you have to fail 3 semesters in a row to be kicked out. And she said, for you, it's 1. I said, well, it's a good thing that I know you see my grades and I'm a straight A student, and it's a good thing I have 164 IQ, and I've been a straight A student my entire life, so I will never fail a class, so we don't have to have this conversation. Even with my 1 strike, it's out. So I smiled and I got up and I left. There were multiple other times she called me in trying to cause issues with me, trying to get me kicked out. She even called me in another time to try to get me to leave, literally talking me out of it. How are you going to provide for your kids with a biblical and theological study? What's your plan? How you have kids to think about? How are you going to provide for them with this? And literally kept trying to convince me to leave, because there's a very big division in that school between a religious spirit and Hearts of Jesus. And I met some of the best people of my life, and I met the people that follow and love Jesus, but they don't love other people, and they're judgmental, and You know what I mean? So we had a horrible experience, and for the whole 2.5 years we were there, not ever did they treat us any better, ever. They were the neighbors that if I needed one egg, I couldn't even ask for an egg. And the coldness they showed us and my children, you know, was very disheartening, especially living right above them for 2.5 years. And I was nothing but loving and kind the entire time, no matter what. And it never changed, you know what I mean? But that's what it was. And at one point, because I was paying so much money out of pocket for babysitters and so poor, I went to the president of the entire Bible Institute and I said, I'm working so hard, I'm so poor, I don't have a car, paying for babysitters and tuition and everything, it's killing me. Is there any way that there could be like some hours that are considered ministry? Because every single child there, every student there, they have to do like a ton of ministry, which it's like volunteering in the kitchen, volunteering in the library. It's any volunteer work counts as their mission work. It doesn't have to be God related at all. It's literally helping in the kitchen, helping in the library, helping with administration. It didn't even have to be Jesus related, right? So I said, could some of my childcare be considered ministry? I said they could literally use that time to teach my kids Bible stories, to go over things with Jesus. It would also be ministry because I'm working to go to Bible school to do work for Jesus. So it's ministry for that, helping someone get through school that needs help. And the president of the school, Mike, he told me, no, they can't do that. So I said, okay. So that was another failed expectation that I just thought 100%. I still believe that it is ministry to help a single mom with childcare, when if they could help in the kitchen and that's ministry, how is not babysitting so I could get a degree to go on and help the world ministry? You know what I mean? So I was really hurt by that. And there was a family that lived on campus, and I saw them every day, and they knew every single thing going on. And they literally told me that they left Elam because after seeing how I was treated, that they just couldn't. Literally, Alexis would cry when I'd be there crying, and just every single thing they did, I'm in her house crying, trying to calm down. I kept wanting to quit, and she kept telling me, don't quit because of them, don't quit because of them. So I endured it for 2.5 years, and there was so many other things that I was just like, what? Man, so many things that I can't even think of all of them right now, but so finally what happened after 2.5 years of just not feeling accepted, we were never invited anywhere. There's another thing. At one point, they let my kids come to some of my classes if it was a day they were off from school. And my kids would come, they would sit silent, there'd be no disturbance, they wouldn't run around. The teachers would literally tell me, your children are so well behaved. They wouldn't make a peep the whole time. And they realized that if they allowed this, that I'd be able to stay in school. So they called me into the office and said, your kids can't come to classes with you anymore. And I said, I'm going to have to pay another babysitter every time. And they said, it is what it is. They can't come to class with you anymore. So now I had to pay more babysitting to go to class anytime they had off from school, every school break, anytime they were sick, anything. Because I couldn't bring them into class anymore, even though there was never a single issue. But I was being pushed out. And there was a complete division of people that wanted to push me out, and the division of the other people that they had their hearts on Jesus. And during this time, I had gotten a boyfriend, and everything in my soul told me no. My discernment was on such high, like, no, this is not good, Ashley, it's not good. So I went to break up with him really, really, really early on, and I had some friends that knew him and his whole family, and they pulled me aside and said, Ashley, you're just scared, you're jaded, this is a man of God, his whole family's of God, his whole family's this and that, and he's this wonderful guy. And I just kept saying, like, I have a bad feeling. And they're like, just trust this, go for it. And reluctantly I did. So I started dating this person, and then just the continual not being accepted there. I even went to the pastor of Elam's church, and that was the church on campus. We went to the Tabernacle and that church every Thursday, and I said, is there any male mentor that would be willing to work with my son? We have no male families, I have no male friends, he doesn't have a stepdad, he's never had a dad. Is there any males in the church that would be willing to work with him and be a male mentor? And he told me no. And that was the pastor of Elam Church at that time, and I asked him right to his face. There's another incident that my friend who worked at the church, she graduated from Elam, she was there 4 years, graduated, worked at the church for many, many, many years. The whole time she was a student there, and after she graduated, stayed working there for many years, right? So the church was throwing away these 2 big bean bags, and we had no couches. It was up a narrow staircase, and you couldn't fit couches up, and I had no money. And they were throwing away these 2 6-foot bean bags, and she had come over all the time. It was one of my closest friends. And when she saw them, she's like, oh my God, like, Ashley and the kids need these. So she said, could we bring them to Ashley and the kids? They have no furniture. And they were so upset, she asked, and they did not want to give them to me, even though they were getting thrown out. To the point she came to my house with tears, her eyes, and she's like, I don't understand. They were throwing them out. And when I said to give them to you, they didn't want to. I don't understand. And she was raised by a pastor. She's very sheltered. Like, she hadn't experienced things like this before. And I was like, yeah, I know. It doesn't surprise me. But she was able to convince them to let us have them. And someone dropped them off for us. That was another experience, but I'm going to get away from my experiences there and tell you what all of this has taught me. What this taught me was, it was my failed expectation, because if I was at a normal college and all these things happened, my feelings wouldn't be hurt, because I didn't have the expectation that they'd be fair, that they wouldn't be judgmental, that they'd be loving and accepting, that they would be like, wow, this is a single mom busting her ass, no car, walking to work, doing anything to become, you know, something in the body of Christ. And I knew I had a calling on my life, and there's a lot of prophetic people and people with discernment, and I'm like, they're gonna feel my calling. God himself told me to come here. They're gonna feel it. And that just wasn't the case at all. You know what I mean? And so for people that you turn from God because of people, that's not right. Our faith isn't dependent about people. Our faith isn't determined by people, how they treat us. Your faith shouldn't change if everyone in a church did you dirty, or, you know what I mean, you heard something horrible about a pastor, or when you hear these pastors that molest little boys. Like, your faith shouldn't change. It's just your relationship was with God. People are people. All people are flawed, and that's what I mean. Nobody saved, not saved, pastors, people that own orphanages, people that live their whole lives at Bible school, on campus, that are respected by the world, like, they're still human. They still have judgment. They still have fear. They still have insecurities, you know. Sometimes it's just about they don't want to show the example of a single mom thriving, surviving, and still moving with God, because what does that tell everyone else when they're teaching, get married, have kids, do it the right way, you know? So you're gonna have bad experiences in the religious community. Look at the Pharisees, you know, Jesus had bad experiences with the religious community. Why wouldn't we? Why are we letting that define our walk with Jesus and getting so far set back, you know? So eventually what happened was I was so tired. I was so rejected. They didn't want me there. I'm being mistreated. I'm busting my ass to be there. And at this point, I don't even know why God has me there anymore. So, I invited my boyfriend over with nobody there, and you sign a contract, you can't have boys in the house, and I knew the neighbors would be like, ha, and call. So the very next day, I had 2 people from the school banging on my door and hand me an eviction notice, which I already knew was going to happen. So it was, again, we had 30 days to vacate, but, you know what I mean, what's new? Watch out, bud. So, where are you going?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get my phone from
Okay. Make sure that's charged. Don't, like, break down with it somewhere far.
Remind me, I need my keys.
Okay. So then, what happened was, so they got the 30-day eviction. I already knew that was coming. At that point, I didn't want to be there. I wanted nothing to do with doing anything that I went to school for. I was just over it. I put the thought of ministry out of my head, being an evangelist. I went because I wanted to be a Christian motivational speaker. I wanted to be like Joyce Meyer, and that's what I wanted to do with my life. That's what I felt my calling was. So I left there, and I was pissed at God. I said, God, why would you tell me to go there? It not be the loving, accepting. I thought we were going to have friends and people were going to invite us for dinner. I thought people were going to help. Like, I thought, you know, people that lived on campus would babysit sometimes so I wouldn't have to pay out of pocket. And there was no help ever. Not once did I have free childcare. Not once did I get a ride anywhere. Not once was the school willing to do anything to help with the childcare situation. I wasn't able then to bring the kids to school, everything. At this point, I was angry fisting God. Like, why would you do this to me? Why? So I left there so bitter, not understanding why God told me to do there, and then nothing came of it, right? 10 years unsaved is what came of it. And so I instantly just got a place with him. And I spent the next 2 years in a horribly, horribly toxic, horrible relationship. And it was to the point that I had to wait one day till he was at work. And me and the kids rented a moving truck. And I packed up everything I owned. Good morning. And I moved out when he was at work. Because that was the only safe way to do it. And to go be homeless and live on a friend's couch. And didn't get much better after, all the years following. But it was, I let people chase me into a bad situation. I didn't remain level-headed and just gather my stuff and follow my instinct, but I was just so hurt. And I believed my friends that it was in my head. People used to talk me out of my discernment all the time. I've never been wrong, not once in my life, but I'd have these people that were so much holier and more spiritual and more anointed and more walking with the Lord, and I'd be like, all right, you know what? Maybe they're right. But even though I've had these giftings, all these spiritual gifts my whole life, I just would let people talk me out of what I knew all the time. Now I don't. Now I never will ever again. Thank you, Jesus. So I thought when I went there, I would find love and safety and protection. I thought we'd be embraced and loved, and my kids would make friends with all the other kids that lived on campus and have all these friends whose parents were, teachers at the school and ministers and all these different people that I thought my kids were going to fall into this beautiful community. I thought, we were going to be welcomed like a big family, and instead we were just shunned and completely alone the whole time. There were some wonderful, wonderful professors, and there's a wonderful woman there named Sue that I spoke to every single day for 2.5 hours that brought one of the biggest healings into my life. Someone was just different things that we walked through some different storms in life, and she, came out the other side and would minister to me every day. And I made some really, really good friends there. But ultimately, I felt like it was a waste of 2.5 years. I feel like it was 2.5 years of some of the worst 2.5 years of my entire life, of being that sick, that overworked, that underappreciated, that being pushed out, just fighting. And soon it was like, God, what am I fighting for? If you wanted me here, you wouldn't have us here and be treated like this. Like, what is this? I was so mad at God. And that's what we do. We turn our anger for people, what people did to us, and we turn it to God. But God gave them free will. What anyone does to you has nothing to do with God. Anything bad someone did to you, whether you were beaten or raped, or now you have permanent damage because of what someone did to you, like, that doesn't give you the right to be mad at God. God gave everyone free will. You're mad at that person, not God. And when we can't separate the two, it separates us from the Lord. And it took me until July of 2024 to get saved, you know. And then I got rebaptized on Mother's Day, and I went into remission May 18th, the very next Sunday. And with my disease, only 20% of people see improvement in the course of 7 years. And God took me through a 10-month whirlwind, the term of a pregnancy, and brought me into remission. And now all the symptoms and everything I'm having, it's all the detox. All the detox causes a lot of symptoms that appear to be neurological, but when I went to remission and I was still 100% on my medicine, I had 0 symptoms. Every single thing was completely gone. But now they're not walking and stuff. It's not neurological. It's the year of bed rest, right? I'm rebuilding that. So it's just detoxing and all the physical stuff I have to do now. But God gave me healing, you know. So it gets weirder. So I move on with my life. I get saved, and once I get saved, I went to Sandy's church, and there's this woman, Pat, there, super prophetic woman, and she gave me this word, and it hit the nail on the head with everything. She told me all this stuff that, you know, only she could know, and everything. She said everything, and I was like, woof. Okay, all right. And one of the things she said was find a church and do not settle. You keep finding a church till you find the church where you belong. So I said, okay. So I didn't go to church for a long time. And there was a few I kept looking up. I was looking up all these different things. I didn't get a feeling about any single church. And then I went to sleep and I had a dream and I saw this church that looked like a Catholic church. And I woke up and I was like, God, you want me to go to a Catholic church? I hate Catholic churches and this is miserable. And all right, Lord, I don't know about this, but you showed me this church. So then I had that dream. So then my neighbor was a Christian and I was like, Joe, can you refer a church to me? And he referred a church, and he knew the pastor there, but he didn't even go to this church. He goes to a different church. So he refers this church to me, just tells me the name of it. So I never look up the address or anything, and I don't know what it looks like. So then I move, and I end up moving, and I end up on Lewis Street. And then I Google where the church is, because I still hadn't been there at this point, whatever. And it turns out that the church was on Lewis Street, 4 doors away from my house. And the first time I saw it, it was the church from my dream. But it's this huge silver building with a steeple and everything. It doesn't look like a typical non-denominational Christian church. This is where I go. It looks like a Catholic church, you know. So I saw the church, and the very first time I went there was with Lex, and we're walking over, and I'm like, Lex, this is the church I had the dream about. And it was the church that he referred to me. And at this point, I can't drive. I can't get picked up and stuff. I couldn't barely go into cars. But because my church was 4 doors away, I was able to walk there. And So, whatever. So, the second I walk in, I'm greeted by this guy, John, and he has a shirt on, and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels. And my entire life, up until like 15, I had this huge teddy bear with a Shawn Michaels t-shirt on it. And I was obsessed with the WWF. Now, Shawn Michaels was my favorite wrestler, and Stone Cold was my second favorite. I saw his shirt, and I was like, yeah, this is where I'm meant to be. And Lex is my best friend in the entire world. He's actually going to be who gives me away on my wedding day. And I was like, Lex, this is the one. And he's like, yep. And our first day there, he's like, I just saw you getting married. And I was like, well, yeah, if I get married anywhere, it's obviously going to be my church, Lex. I'm still in life.
I thought it was my keys. 10 out Louis' big, fat, selfish name.
So, where was I? Crap. Oh yeah, so then God brought me to this church, right? Here's the kicker. I get there, blah, 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 and one day, I walk in and I see Sister Sylvia sitting in the front row. And that was one of my professors from Elam. And she is super, super godly, anointed woman. I had her as a professor, loved her class, loved her, like, just everyone that knows Sister Sylvia, there's just no words. She's just phenomenal woman, and just lives every day of her life for the Lord, travels around the world. So anyway, so when I get there, she's sitting in the front row. So I'm just like, oh, Sister Sylvia's here. It didn't even occur to me she was there to speak or whatever. So it turned out she was there to give prophetic words at the end. So the pastor says, I'm going to pick 3 people out of the crowd, and they're going to come up and get a prophetic word. So he calls me up. So as I'm walking up, I was like, oh, that was my professor. He's like, what? You went to Elam? I didn't know that. And I was like, yeah, because that's something I put behind me and never want to think about again. So I ended up seeing my old professor from an hour away from my school. My school's like an hour and 10 minutes from here. And that church is on that school's property. So that old church and old school is an hour and 10 minutes from here. So I got this prophetic word, and it meant a lot to me, and really sustained me through a lot of my sickness. And then all of a sudden, the president of our school is there to minister. And then I find out my church is affiliated with them. And I'm like, God, I don't understand you. You made me go to this school. That's 2.5 years of the worst 2.5 years of my life. Nothing ever came of it. And it led me into a 10-year downward spiral and away from you. Now you bring me to this church that clearly you want me at. Why do we have to be affiliated with them? Why do I have to see anyone from there? Like, I would be happy to have never seen or spoken to them ever again. Anyone there, just because I don't want to remember it. It was a hurtful time in my life, and I felt like God steered me the wrong direction because nothing came of it. Nothing came from my education. Nothing came from the experience. I didn't go and become a Christian motivational speaker. Nothing. So I still, to this day, don't know why he sent me there. I don't know why my church happens to be affiliated with them. Out of every church that he sent me to in the entire world, he sent me to one knowing it's affiliated with there. But my church is where God wants me, and that has restored my faith in the religious community, because the religious community is not a religious community. When you find the right church, it's people that are like Jesus. They have hearts of servants. They're loving. They're accepting. From the day I started that church, I felt like they were my church family. I felt loved and accepted and cared for, and they have been the biggest support since the day I got sick. And they help me to go to events, and when I can't walk, and all sorts of stuff. Like, it is the most incredible people. So I went from one church that I just hated my experience there, went to a Bible school, I hated my experience there, and then to step into the body of Christ that is what it was meant to be. they have no idea how much I appreciate them after being so shunned for so long. And I'll get into another church story a whole different day, and that experience there was another really bad experience. And up until finding this church family, I never had a good religious experience. And that's what I'm telling everyone. Like, if your church isn't feeling like this is my church family, if you don't wake up Sunday so happy to go, so happy to hear that message, so happy to know like these are God's words, my pastor's anointed, I'm receiving things today, like if you don't wake up like hell yeah to go to church on Sunday, you're in the wrong church. Sunday is my favorite day. I look forward to church all week long. I wish there was more than just Sunday service. And I can't wait. My favorite part about Saturday is that tomorrow's Sunday. And I would never feel excited about church. I used to go because Sandy would drag me. I went out of respect for her. I hated every moment of it. I didn't like an ounce of it. I would dread it. I would play sick sometimes just not to go. I never wanted to go there, not one time ever. I literally hated that church. And I just was like, I don't even understand how she goes there. The male pastor, my discernment did not want to be anywhere around him. I just didn't feel I did not want to be there. If Sandy didn't force me, I would have went once and never again, But, that church ended up falling apart, and everyone ended up seeing what I saw the whole time, but because other people are more anointed and discernment and all that than me, which no, I listened to them over myself. But this time I listened to Jesus, and he brought me where I was meant to be. So no matter how many times and in how many ways you've been burned by the Christians, there are Christians that are like Jesus. There are Christians that are loving and accepting, and you go into that church and you feel like you're at home. So don't stop till you find that, and don't get discouraged because of how you've been treated by the Christian community, because if I still let that plague me, those two experiences, I would have never went back to church, and I wouldn't have found the best thing. I'm looking at my church right now. The best thing that's ever happened to me was finding this church. It saved my life. My pastor and an elder came over when I was paralyzed from my neck down, and they did prayer and deliverance. And the very next day, the Lord said, get up and march. And up until then, I was in a wheelchair. And I put on the little drummer boy because I was listening to it the day before. So it was fresh in my mind. I put on the little drummer boy march. I put it on. I didn't even tap my foot to the ground. I jumped up and marched around the whole house, marched down the stairs, and just kept marching. And I've been walking ever since. And that's just one of the very, 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 very small things that they've done to help. Even moving, they physically helped and do my move, and just the prayers. And I email with my pastor and his wife daily, and they always take the time, and my emails are this big, you know what I mean? It probably takes 20 minutes out of their day just to read my email, and they always respond. And no matter how annoying or needy I am, there's not one moment, they make me feel anything except loved and accepted. And that's how you should have a relationship with your pastors, just like you have a relationship with Jesus. You should, know your pastors. It shouldn't be they're up here and you're here. You should know them. You should know their hearts. You should have a relationship with them. You should be as comfortable speaking to them as you are your mom, or you know what I mean? And if you don't have that, go to a different church, because it's out there. At the food drive this morning, it's a church that does it, so everyone goes to the same church. They're like, will we see you Sunday? And I was like, I am unrecruitable. My church is exactly where God wants me, and it's they all have hearts of Jesus. My pastor's wonderful. I am never, ever, ever leaving, but I'll be here. They do it twice a month, so I'll be here, everyone, with that, but I'm not joining your guys' church. And they're like, cool. But it's cool because I get to know a whole other group of Christian brothers and sisters, and everyone there was so amazing, and it was so good because I collect food from this food pantry drop off every single month since I've gotten sick. My mom goes and gets it for me, so it's so nice being able to give back and help what helps me, because if we didn't have food pantries, we would not have enough food. Like, even now, there's not a single month we don't run out of meat for at least a solid 7 to 10 days. There's not a single month that we're not out of milk for a solid 7 to 10 days. And if we didn't have food pantries, we would literally... Okay. So, I don't know what I'm saying. I have no attention span. But don't let people keep you from Jesus. You know what I mean? Don't let your bad experiences, your trauma, don't let being mad at Jesus, don't let the how could you let this happen. God didn't let something happen. God gave free will. If you get beaten, if you get raped, if you were molested as a kid, if your kids were molested, if you went to jail unjustly, that's not because of God. God can't take another person's free will to do things to us. So he can't make an abuser not abuse. He can't make a rapist not rape. He can't make a pedophile not pedophile. That is free will. So that is why bad things happen. You don't get mad at Jesus. What you do is you pray into it, and he'll send angels to protect you. Once you're saved and you take that step and you get baptized, you're protected. I'm the safest I've been in my entire life. The whole world could find where I am at any single second of any day, and I've never felt safer. And you guys see how many sexual predators are on my things, and I'm only posting like one a day just because it's exhausting, and I don't want my whole page thousands and thousands of just pervy comments. So I'm just doing like one a day. Eventually I'll stop even doing that just because it's exhausting. But I have, you know, that wasn't even the only one I got today. I posted one of the ones I got just today, or two of the ones from today, but there are more just today. And still last night, as I'm trying to do research to figure out ways to detox and natural remedies to get through and anything I could do to help with detox, my phone was spam call, spam call, spam call, spam call, spam call by men that think with their little head over and over and over and over. I couldn't even get through reading. And this morning, the same thing was happening again. I get so many calls all day long. I could barely do research for my recovery on my phone. And it's not cute, you guys. It's not cute to sit and spam someone, spam someone, spam someone. You guys are literally making it that I can't read about my recovery. I can't read about detox. Like, I can't always read. I go in and out of literacy, and I'm literally illiterate at times. I look at words, I can't understand them. They look like foreign languages. If I can read it, I can't comprehend or remember what the words read. So when I have a time that I can do research and it's getting interrupted, what means is the ship sails and I don't get to do my research that day. So it's actually harming me. And it would be harming anyone, not just someone with my illness, but it would be harming anyone. Women don't like to feel preyed upon. Women want to feel safe. Women don't want to feel afraid of dark alleys. And you guys have women afraid. We're walking around like surrounded by predators. You know what I mean? No woman is going to get a message like, let's bang, or trying to smash, and be like, oh, hell yeah. And the worst part of all, I'm getting the messages from people because they're watching my videos, and then they're responding like, oh, look at this sick evangelist in a relationship with who she's going to marry. She definitely wants to bang me. What? You guys are sick. You know what I mean? And that's coming from a sick person. So if a crazy person's calling you crazy, that's pretty damn bad. And the fact that I'm more sane and more well-behaved, I can only think with the right side of my brain. A lot of the times, my emotional and mental capacity is that of a child or a teenager, and I can't get to those adult levels. I have to regrow up. So, it's just a lot to deal with while I'm literally trying to relearn how to cook, get through recovery, remember things, like actually get better. And then it's like detrimental to just sit and not be able to read because people won't stop sending me filthy messages the whole time I'm reading. I'm getting eggplants and this and that. And all you sexual predators, stop sending eggplants and find a millimeter monster. Send a little caterpillar. Be truthful about something in your lives. But it's not fair. It's not right. I hate that I have to bring up harassment every day, but it just doesn't stop from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. I can't have any peace on my phone at all. And with me going in and out of those childlike emotions and mentality and stuff, it gets overwhelming, because as I transition in between where I feel like an adult and my waves are, okay, you're adulting right now, then I could handle it. But when I'm in that state of all that, it's like creepy as shit. It's really creepy, and it creeps me out. Oh, we're apparently going to the lake. Mom and Pam are going to the lake. Pam's one of my favorite people in the world. She became friends with my mom, and my mom's like, you would love her, and my mom's always right. And I do. I absolutely love her. She's one of the most loving, kind, gentle souls. Just pure love. I'm super lucky to have met her. Yeah, so I'm going to keep asking people to stop doing it. It's still not stopping, but like I said, it's even worse because the people who are doing it are watching my videos, doing it while they're watching my videos, doing it already knowing my full story, and still doing it. So now you're not just a sexual predator, but you're a bully. It's bullying me. If I'm telling you how sick I am and the things I'm dealing with, and you're sitting there like, you want this D? Hell no. Ew. Ew. Nobody wants that D. That's why you're so desperate, because nobody wants it. Get saved, get married, get a wife. And then you have to walk around all freaking, all the damn time. And even Christian men, when they don't get laid, they still don't become sexual predators. So even if guys aren't getting any, it still doesn't make you have to be a sexual deviant and a creep and message sick women. Come on. Have some freaking couth. You know what I mean? Chivalry is not dead. And all of you guys acting like that, the only thing you're gonna get, well, is exactly what you deserve. So get saved, get better, and find a good woman, and stop living in your sexual sin, and stop living in your shame, and stop living as bullies and predators. I mean, start being gentlemen. We gotta bring back manners and gentlemen. I mean, I wish I was live back in the day, Braveheart times, when the men were knights and they were men. They protected their women. They didn't, you know what I mean? The good ones, they all protected their women. There was the bad armies, and those were the predators. But now you guys are the bad army. But I just wanted to do that review for anybody who's been driven from the religious community, because I speak to so many people that stop going to church. So many people. And when they go back, they're happy. And if you're not going back to church because of what people in the church did to you, they won. And you lost. But if you find the right church and you get right with God, none of that matters anymore. You know what I mean? And he saw what everyone did to you. He sees your pain, and guess what? He sees, wow, the Christian community turned you from me and you came back to me. And he's going to reward that. There's some expression about sheep, and he'll have 99 sheep. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know the Bible, so look up a Bible verse about the sheep. But anyway, the Lord's our shepherd, and if one sheep leaves, he'll leave his whole flock and go after that one sheep. And all you lost people, you're that one sheep. I mean, so if today you're sending filthy messages and then you repent and you get saved, God's like, hey, I know what made you like this. Hey, I know you were abused as a child. Hey, I knew you were molested, or something happened to you to make you behave this way. Or this is your struggle, or maybe it's a mental illness and he directs you to some healing or counseling, whatever, but he'll save you from that. You're not ruled by your little head. If you were, every man in the world would be. So you got to stop giving so much power to your hormones and just grow up. Grow up. I'm interested to know too if any of the things any of you guys are saying has ever worked, ever. I can't imagine how it ever could, ever. I just couldn't even imagine. So that's the other thing. Your tactics don't even work. So at this point, I think you're doing it to be a bully, because no girl's gonna respond like, hell yeah, you sick perv, let's get it. No. They're gonna be creeped the hell out. Like, ugh. Every time you do that, they're repulsed. You're just repulsing people. And you don't need to just walk around repulsing people and living in shame. You know what I mean? You could be good people. Good people do bad things, and then you get saved and you put it behind you. Lots of Christian men have backgrounds of like porn addiction and womanizing and things like that, and they get saved. We have people that come up and talk at our church all the time, and they do things about people that were on drugs, people with sex addictions, people with all sorts of things. And we love them all because now they're saved and they're not still hurting people. You know what I mean? They're not still, going around hurting women. And just wait on your wife. And men nowadays are like, women ain't shit, women don't cook, women don't clean, women this, women that. Women are fed up. I haven't met a woman that hasn't been sexually abused. I haven't met a woman that hasn't joined a dating site that they're like, oh my god, within a couple days you have to get off because they act like it's a damn porn site. People don't join dating sites just to do porn stuff. There are sites for that, but then all the sites that aren't for that, like Christian Mingle and those, people are in there for a relationship. And if you're not in there for a relationship, join one of the booty call sites, not where people are actually trying to meet who God has for them and live right. Stop toying with emotions, wasting people's times. You know what I mean? It's not the right thing to do. And women now, they're using men for money, and they're not dating them and this and that, and they have no respect for them because they're just like, this guy's a dog. I don't care how I treat him. He's a scumbag. So they're treating you like the scum you are because you're not getting fixed. And once you're fixed, one, you're going to attract good women, and you're going to feel a lot better about yourselves. You could start getting self-respect. You could start getting confidence. You could start healing, because whatever is in you making you behave that way, it's broken. There's something broken in you to behave that way. You can't be healed and behave that way. It's impossible. Well, I'm going to get ready and go get a few rocks at the lake and shift gears. Every time my emotions spike, my symptoms flare. So every time I'm sitting here getting annoyed, it gives me significant pain in my body. It flares me up. My whole body is deteriorated. So for me to have to deal with all that on top of this, it's like, enough is enough. I want to get away from ever having to talk about this ever again and just focus on Jesus. Because most of the people on my site aren't sexual predators, and a huge amount of my site have chronic illness, and I'm doing this for the people with chronic illness. They don't need to sit and hear about sexual predators. They need to hear my messages of hope and the healing and God's miracles and signs and wonders and what God's doing in my life and the lives of my family. And they need to see the testimony of God's healing. And I'm in the middle of a miracle, and they need to be able to hear about the miracle. You know what I mean? Every video that I do on sexual perversion is a video that now I'm not doing God's work, which I guess this is God's work because you guys need healing. But I really want to shift gears, you guys. It makes my back start spasming. It puts me in flare-up every single time I have to talk about this, think about this. Every time I'm getting spam called. It's greatly, greatly, greatly affecting my health, my body, my joints. Everything locks up and spazzes out. And there's times if I think about it or talk to it too long, I literally start having seizures. And I'll be out, my eyes start rolling back in my head, and boom. You know what I mean? The second a seizure comes on, I feel like a pull in my head, my eyes roll back, and I have, 40-second notice. So they happen out in public and everything. So I like to try to stay calm and at peace, and I want to do God's work and be an evangelist, but I want to be able to do that thinking about what's pure and holy, not about this all the time, I'm sick of my kids having to see people say these things to me. I'm sick of my mom having to see these things. I'm sick of my future husband having to see these things. I have a lot of my church family. I'm just sick of people having to see me belittled when I'm trying to do God's work. And I'm trying to do it really, really sick. All right, Mom's here for the lake. Bye.